Hey everyone, happy Monday and welcome into another edition of To The Point podcast. You guys are all doing well. I certainly am after a great weekend, the first real weekend of August, and we've been so fortunate with the weather we've been getting here in New Brunswick. Got to take advantage a little bit to head out in the water. So we got to do that for the hang out with some good friends. So really good weekend on the home front here. And it's always a perfect weekend when you can blend in some awesome time, outdoors, and then blend in some sports. And you come back on a Monday, and I've been saying this the last couple weeks, but the sports world has been delivering even in the down time of the year because it's a weird year where baseball started late because of labor negotiations. The World Juniors were canceled in December, and now we get to see them starting tomorrow in Edmonton, Alberta. The NFL is in training camp. We have the Rogers Cup, which just creeped up on me that I totally forgot about. But tennis is going to come into the forefront here this week on the podcast. We still have some NHL news, so it's been fantastic. Not to mention the UFC is really has continued to deliver to me. They pump out good content every week, and I love to absorb it and watch it, which is something I did Sunday morning watching Saturday night's fights. But again, lots to get into today, lots to chat about, and some housekeeping here. I'm happy to say that if you can all remember, in December, I was in Edmonton for the World Junior Hockey Championships. And I was enjoying it, although it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life because I've never been to a sporting event where you couldn't buy anything, you couldn't bring a Cliff Bar in to eat, you couldn't have a bottle of water. It was truly, you had to have your mask on, sit by yourself, and it was a weird experience. But I'm happy to say that I'll be going back to Edmonton Monday. So Monday I'm heading out and going to catch the last preliminary game of Team Canada. I'll be there for the quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the gold medal and bronze medal games. So I'm very much looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the great talent, to see Connor Bedard played up close and personal. And we'll talk about more about the World Juniors later in the show. Give a little preview before it. It all starts tomorrow, if you can believe it. Canada opens up their schedule on Wednesday, and every game in Atlantic time will be at 7 p.m. for Team Canada. There are 3 games every day on the same ice surface. It's all in Edmonton. It's not in Red Deer for the second stint of the 2021-2022 World Junior Hockey Championship. So I'm looking forward to being back there. I didn't really get to experience Edmonton, although in my brief time there, it reminded me of St. John, New Brunswick, which I'm not a huge fan of St. John. So we'll see if it's any better when it's not minus 40 degrees and you can be outside without, wanting to keel over for, a little longer period of time. So we'll see. But again, looking forward to going back, and we'll talk about the World Juniors as we get deeper into the show today with players to watch and things of that nature. But let's start today with baseball. And there were a number of series this weekend that meant a lot when it comes to perception, momentum, and how you feel about yourself heading into the last 2 months of this Major League Baseball season. The 3 series that really caught my gaze were the Mets and Braves, NL East rivals, who the Braves are the reigning defending World Series champions. They have been on top of this division for some time, back-to-back trips to at least the championship game, while the Mets have been spending lots of money but haven't been getting much results. They've been a team that's been second fiddle. They've been the Clippers to the Lakers in Los Angeles for the longest time, but the Mets are starting to rise up. Another series to me was Dodgers-Padres. Again, the Dodgers have been the alpha, the man in the National League for close to a decade now. They've been the linchpin. They've been the starting horn, if you will, where you start the race, you're trying to catch up to the Dodgers. And the Padres have been the little brother. They've been in the shadow. They got a beautiful city. They got a good ballpark. They're the only team in town. But the Padres are, again, looking to get a little bit, they're like famous people that go to a function, but they're sitting in the back because they're not that famous or people don't really care about them. Maybe the Padres are like to try to bring this home in a reference that sits 2022. I'll say the Padres are Pete Davidson after Kim Kardashian dumps them, where the Padres want to sit with the Dodgers. They want to be looked at in the same light, but they likely never will. That series was interesting. And then there's Cardinals, Yankees. Couple of reasons. The Cardinals are fighting for the National League Central lead, and the Yankees have been sputtering a bit lately, and it was just an important series for a number of reasons. You get to see Matt Carpenter return to St. Louis, where he had his best parts of his career. He's still playing fantastic for the New York Yankees now. But it was an interesting weekend in baseball, and they all had really dramatic impacts, with starting off the Mets taking 4 out of 5 games from the Atlanta Braves. I've been talking about the Houston Astros and how they're the best team in baseball. And I still believe they're the best team in the American League. I still think for right now they're the best team in baseball. But I will say, the Mets have the most potential. They have the biggest upside in being the best team in baseball by the end of the year, to me. And the reason is because of starting pitching. No team in baseball, no team, the trade deadline's over. This includes the Dodgers. No team in baseball can say that they have 2 aces on their staff. Nobody. The Mets do. If Jacob deGrom is healthy come playoff time and the Warrior God is sitting there and Max Scherzer, the Mets have a 1-2 punch that no other team can match. Framber Valdez and Justin Verlander are extremely good. Framber Valdez is not an ace. Walker Buehler has been inconsistent all year. I love Walker Buehler, but he's constantly injured. He's not healthy. And you're going to tell me that Clayton Kershaw is an ace come postseason time? I'll take a lap. So the Mets have that option. They have that ability. Not to mention Pete Alonso is playing at an MVP level. Jeff McNeil continues to deliver just quality base hits. Brandon Nimmo, as I've mentioned many times on this show, is one of the toughest leadoff batters in all of baseball. The Mets are just a well-oiled machine. They got a veteran manager who knows how to do this in Buck Showalter. The Mets are legit. The Braves are really good. They still are really good, but they don't even have close to the quality of pitching. Max Fried is legit. He's great. But after you get past him and Kyle Wright, it gets thin. It gets thin for the Braves, where Taijuan Walker is a better option. Chris Bassett, you could argue, is a better option. And David Peterson, their 5th starter, isn't bad either. The Mets have a lot to offer. But something, you look at teams like Atlanta, the Dodgers, and the National League, just for example, they can name off a bunch of guys that are starting pitchers that are good. They can be in the rotation. You'd love to have in the regular season. Maybe you have 6 starters in the regular season. You feel great about it. But are they going to win? Are they viable come playoff time? Are they guys that can deliver? That is still a question. That hasn't been answered yet. Because you have all these guys, you can throw them out there, but do you want them out there? Is that the arm you want in this place? I don't think it is. So the Mets are a real threat. They now have the same record as the New York Yankees. So look out, Yankees fans. The Mets are right there with you. Oh, and they're better than you. That too. I didn't think the Yankees would make the playoffs. I'm wrong about that. I'm on this show. I admit when I'm right. I admit when I'm wrong. I didn't think the Yankees would make the playoffs. They're going to. They're going to win the American League East because the Blue Jays are good, not great. Again, they got gifted a win yesterday in that game against the Twins. Red Sox stink, and the Orioles are hoping to grab a wild card slot. They won't, but they're hoping to. So, and the Rays won't catch them because they're just bleh. So the Yankees are sitting in a position now where their best hope is they should try to be the best team in New York. Because I don't think they will be by the end of the year. Yankees got better at the trade deadline. They did. But they're still not winning games. They got swept this weekend by the Cardinals. My Cardinals swept the Yankees. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is a story of the Mets blossoming. The Mets coming out of the shadows, if you will, and saying, hey, we're here and we're ready to play. Now it's on the Braves, the Dodgers, these great National League teams to answer. Because I see the Braves making the playoffs, but I do wonder if they have enough pitching to overcome what the Mets can throw at them day in, day out. But really impactful series for the Mets. Take 4 or 5. Edwin Diaz looks like a lockdown closer. They just don't have many warts in their lineup right now. They just got to hope Jacob deGrom can stay healthy. They can win a World Series this year. They can. Now, the Mets are a team that have to come out of the shadows. They have to prove themselves to get validation because they play in a city where the New York Yankees are playing, and the Yankees will always be looked at more favorably, more desirable, just better than New York Mets, which is, to be fair, because the Metropolitans have been inferior for some time. They are the Jets to the New York Giants, although the New York Giants have been pathetic for some time now, and the Jets might even have a better record than the Giants this year. Wait to see. But the Padres they've been punching above their weight class. They've been movers and shakers. In the last 2+ years, they've acquired Manny Machado, Yu Darvish, Will Myers, Juan Soto, Josh Bell. They re-signed Fernando Tatis Jr. III. Traded for Mike Clevenger. Traded for Blake Snell. Traded for Sean Manaea. Need I go anymore? This team is a team built on others' teams' development. They have very little people that they've done it themselves. Tatis, Bueller. They're acquiring other teams' great talent and saying, we're going to build a super team and try to win a championship. They are doing the basketball identity here. They truly are, because they're looking around and saying, okay, yes, we've had some good players here in San Diego, but we can't win with these guys. We'll keep Tatis because we love him. But with these young guys that we hope to build, no, they're not good for us now. We want to win a World Series. We're desperate. We want to be relevant. Our owners never won a championship. Let's do it here in San Diego. Okay. Well, they played 5 games since the trade deadline. 5 games. And the Padres have won one of them. The Padres have won one of those games, and they just got swept by the Los Angeles Dodgers for the second time this season. Not to mention, the Padres only scored 3 runs in those 3 games. Juan Soto walked 3 times. Good for him, but they didn't score any runs. Now you could pivot and say, well, Fernando Tatis isn't playing. He was on a rehab assignment. He'll be back with the team this week. All true. But there's certain things in sports that will just remain the same until it's proven otherwise. I will have doubts about certain teams until the day they win. For instance, the Los Angeles Chargers, this might be a deep pull for some people, but the Los Angeles Chargers have had really good teams. They've had good quarterbacks, Hall of Famers, Antonio Gates, likely Phillip Rivers. Derwin James is one of the best safeties in football currently. They've had good players on the roster. Yet, LaDainian Tomlinson, another one that comes to mind. But yet, I'll never have confidence in even that team making the playoffs. They have Justin Herbert, one of the great young quarterbacks. They made a lot of offseason moves, which we'll talk about in the podcast in the coming weeks. But I will never have faith in that team succeeding because they've never succeeded. They made it to an AFC Championship game in 2007. They haven't been back since. It's coming on 25 years. Sorry, 15 years. Not to jump on the low-hanging fruit, the Toronto Maple Leafs. To believe they'll win a first-round series, it's hard to believe until I see them do it. Leaf fans will continue to believe to their own peril. But you get where I'm going with this. The Padres will never be in the Dodgers category. They'll never be in the Dodgers stratosphere until they beat them, until they win. They played each other 2 years ago in the divisional series. The Dodgers swept them. They played this last weekend. The Dodgers swept them. It's not even a two-horse race. It's one horse, and then you have the disabled horse who's back 50 yards while he's in the race, air quotes. The Padres have shiny toys. The Padres have names that you know. They have sellable assets. However you want to frame it. The Padres are sexy. They're the new thing. They're Kim Kardashian right now, single, with many men looking at her. Who's going to be the next guy to step up to the plate? But like I said, the Padres, they're nice. They're good to look at. They're not going to win a World Series. I thought that after the trade deadline. Sure, they made all the biggest moves. That doesn't mean you're going to win. The Mets are better than the Padres. The Dodgers are better than the Padres. I mean, I could make an argument that my Cardinals are better than the Padres. I think the Braves are better than the Padres. That's just the National League. That's an early prediction. San Diego Padres will not win the World Series this year, but I'll even put it more right at the forefront. Not only will the Padres not win the World Series, they will not make the National League Championship Series. They will be out in the divisional round again after trading tons of prospects, getting Juan Soto, and the franchise will be no closer to winning the prize that they so desperately want. Sorry, Padre fans. Sorry, California. Well, not really, because maybe the Dodgers will win the World Series. Dodgers-Mets 2016 National League Championship Series. So 2015 National League Championship Series. Mets won that series. Could the Mets get back there? Could the Mets beat the Dodgers again? I think they could. We'll wait and see. Finally, I touched on this a little bit earlier. Cardinals sweep the Yankees. My Cardinals sweep the Yankees. The Cardinals are such a funny team because they're built on the backs of old men. We got Yadier Molina. You have Adam Wainwright, who's 40. You have Albert Pujols, who's 42. And yet this Cardinals team has caught fire. They are now in first place in the National League Central, surpassing the Brewers. And the Cardinals are a dangerous team in that I believe they have a different motivation than some teams. They know this is the last kick at the can. They know this is it. This core of this team is going to be different. This team is going to be different going into next season and beyond. They'll have to make decisions. They'll have to try to acquire arms to get better. They've got fanfare all year because of these players, their swan song, their last trips everywhere. But for the Yankees, they held leads twice on Friday night. They blew it. They got walked off. They held leads on Saturday afternoon, blew it. Held leads in the first inning yesterday, but the Cardinals rallied in all three games. It's not panic time in New York because you're going to make the playoffs. But I will say this. You lost 2 to the Mariners last week. Then you got swept by the Cardinals. So you've lost 5 of your last 6. That's a fact. That can't be taken back. So here's what I'm thinking when it comes to the St. Louis Cardinals when it comes to New York Yankees. They need to figure it out and figure it out quickly because these teams are getting better. The Blue Jays are starting to win games. They're getting help from the umps too, but they're starting to win. They're starting to win games. The Twins are a good team. The White Sox are still hanging around there. Houston's the best team in baseball. They're the best team in the American League. They're not getting any worse. It is time to figure it out if you're the Yankees and start playing good baseball. Because unlike the Mets, you have a whole lot of starters, but I'm not sure you want many of them pitching in playoff games. Do you want Domingo Germán pitching in a playoff game? I'd want Jameson Tylon over a lot of these guys. They traded Jordan Montgomery. He played pretty well yesterday afternoon, getting a win against his former team, the Yankees. Do you trust Garrett Cole pitching in a playoff game? I don't know. Ever since he lost his sticky stuff, he hasn't exactly been the same pitcher. Funny how that works. You traded for Frankie Montas. Gave up 6 earned runs in his first start as a Yankee yesterday. Wasn't great. It's not panic time, but you're in Seattle for 3 games. It's time to start winning some games. You got a big lead in that division, but you don't want to be leaving the season with a winning division by 2.5 games and really being scared going into the playoffs. Not to mention, you get home field, you get the best record in the American League, you have a bye. You don't have to play a wild card team. You get to sit and rest. That is extremely valuable, and that should be something the Yankees are working towards and not allowing Houston to have home field advantage throughout the American League playoffs. But what do I know? Another interesting nugget in the world of baseball to me. Since the trade deadline, the Milwaukee Brewers have not won a ball game. On Monday, they made the shock trade, trading Josh Hader to the San Diego Padres. And they got some prospects in return, and they also got a starting pitcher in Taylor Rogers. This was a shocker completely because Hader was linked in with Milwaukee, and they viewed it as trading a bullpen piece that might be getting worse to get some starting pitching and likely trying to maximize their winning window longer into the future. They got Christian Yelich under contract. They got Andrew McCutchen on their team. They got Luis Urias. They have a good team in Milwaukee with some decent starting pitching. But since then, they haven't won a game. And I'm starting to wonder what the clubhouse is like. Has Craig Counsell got these guys back into game mode? Are they dialed in on winning, or were they so rattled by this trade deadline move that it's completely affecting their play? To think that that doesn't happen is naive. To think that some of those players were not pissed off with that kind of move, I think is naive. They're human beings. What happens to all of us as human beings when something doesn't go our way? When our team loses, when we don't get a raise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We throw a hissy fit. We bitch. We complain. The world is falling. God, the world hates us. Maybe God hates you if you're religious. Not telling you to live your life, just speculating. So maybe it's all of the above. It's just a sense of hatred. You're pissed off. You'd rather things were better. Right. So with all that being said, the Brewers might be saying, why did you trade away our closer? We were going to win the National League Central, go to the playoffs, and go on a deep run. Maybe management doesn't see this team as a World Series threat. I don't. To me, the Cardinals will win the National League Central. Milwaukee should get a wild card spot because it's not that big of a race in the American League. Sorry, in the National League. You have the Padres sitting there. You have the Braves sitting there. And then you have Milwaukee. Perhaps the Giants could go on a run, but it looks like they're completely falling off the map. Big series for the Giants this week as they play the Padres. But you should be safe. But to me, it's to get a wild card spot after leading division for most of the season. This will be a battle down the stretch. These two teams do play each other this upcoming weekend, but it's time for Milwaukee to turn it around in that clubhouse and just their vibe. To me, the trade deadline hurt this team because they were leading a division and technically you got worse on paper. Miami trading away relievers. That made sense. The team is not going to make the playoffs. They're not that great. Baltimore is overachieving. Trading away Jorge Lopez, trading away Trey Mancini, who had 2 home runs on Saturday, including a grand slam for the Houston Astros. Those moves made sense because you're not where you want to be. Milwaukee's in a playoff spot. They're a perennial playoff team, and they decided to get worse. That is a culture shock. While Philadelphia, who was in a similar type position, who is in the another team I forgot, who was in the wild card race with Milwaukee, added Noah Syndergaard, added players. They got better on paper than Milwaukee did. So it's a very different mentality coming from that organization, from Jay Dombrowski in Philly, pushing his chips to the middle of the table, and Milwaukee saying, well, we're going to give away one of our chips to hopefully get some more chips down the line. Playing the long game. Players don't like the long game. Players don't like to hear the word rebuild. Players don't like to hear the term reset. However you want to phrase, we're not going to be that great right now. Or we understand you might think we're worse, but we're the baseball people. We know what we're doing. We know what's right for this organization. It's on the leaders of that clubhouse to change that opinion, to bring in a new opinion, to do something to improve morale. Because the clubhouse is going to be a little more negative because of what's happening right now. That's just a fact. That's the way sports works. So watch out for the Milwaukee Brewers down the stretch here, because they're very much in the middle of a wild card race, but I'm also interested to see how this team reacts to Craig Counsell and to themselves moving forward after losing Josh Hader rather unexpectedly. So that's really the baseball recap from the weekend. A lot of interesting news and notes in the world of baseball. And, a lot of interesting series, and I think that'll be the way it works down the stretch here. Again, some divisions are locked up. I don't see the Yankees forfeiting that lead. I don't see that happening especially the National League West after the Dodgers just swept the Padres. The Padres need to hold on and grab a wild card spot at this point. They need to focus on that, just winning ball games rather than trying to pass the Dodgers. So we'll see what happens, but baseball should be interesting down the stretch here as we move forward. National Hockey League. Twitter is an interesting place. Twitter is where I kind of gauge the thoughts on the fan base of teams when different things happen. On Thursday, you got some really happy people with the Jonathan Huberdeau signing in Calgary who are excited that a great winger decided to stick with your team after multiple great talented pieces said, actually, we're tired of being here, and Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. Well, Jonathan Huberdeau stayed in Calgary. I'm not sure it was because of the team mindset or the coach or anything. It might have just been because he made $10.5 million and he wouldn't have got $10.5 million on the open market. And if he did, then bully for him. But I would have taken a different offer than going back to Calgary because I think he'll hate Calgary in about 5 seconds. But what do I know? I'm not his shrink, but it's cold and he's used to driving a Lambo in South Beach. So that seems like a bit of a drastic change. But I'll touch back on Calgary in a minute. But today it was the day of the Boston Bruins on Twitter. Because Boston, it's Monday, August 8th. Why not release some headlines? Why not start creating a stir, getting some hockey news back into the forefront? When they announced the signings of two of their most respected, two of their most beloved centers in team history, in David Krejci and captain, one of the most revered players in franchise history, Patrice Bergeron. Bergeron returns to the Bruins on a 1-year, $5 million deal. $2.5 million of that money is in incentives, so it's a $2.5 million base salary. While Krejci returns on a 1-year, $1 million deal with additional $2 million he can earn in incentives for this upcoming season. So it is a happy day for Boston. They get two of their guys they love back. But unfortunately for the Boston Bruins, this isn't a great day. I will never discredit Patrice Bergeron. Patrice Bergeron is one of the best players in league history. He might be the best 200-foot center in league history. His Selke trophies point that out. He's a great leader. He's a great representative for Canada. I will never say anything to disparage that man. He deserves all the respect, all the credit in the world for what he's accomplished over his career. No doubt about it. However, the David Krejci return to Boston was met with universal praise. It was met with people just over the moon excited about a guy in David Krejci returning to North America after spending last year in the Czech Republic, where he did not average a point per game. Not to mention the last time David Krejci represented the Bruins, he did not look at all great in that second round playoff loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, you're bringing back Bergeron, makes all the sense in the world. He's your number one center still. Is David Krejci your number two center? Because he was when you left, but now he's a year older. He's got more wear on the tires. Completely unreliable. He's a guy that makes you want to throw things at the wall. He's got all the talent in the world. He's a big physical center, but he can't put it all together, it seems. So Krejci now returns to the Bruins with Coyle, with Bergeron, and you're right back to where you were. A team that's good, but it's never good enough to win. Normally, celebrations in Boston are celebrating trophies. You're at a parade. You're seeing somebody win a cup. You're seeing somebody do something incredible. But now that Tom Brady's gone, now that the glory days of the Bruins have passed, now that the Celtics, although they got to a finals this past year, Jason Tatum melted and that team didn't win, Boston is all basically what they're known for now is just being happy that old players stay in town. That's the celebration in Boston now. It's not that we won. It's that David Krejci decided to come back. Old man David Krejci, who isn't even close to being in his prime. David Krejci, who is half of what he used to be. Boston fans are celebrating the fact that they're going to be middle of the pack. They will be one of the... You're in the Atlantic Division now where teams are getting better. Detroit just had a great offseason. Ottawa just had a great offseason. Tampa, they got worse on paper, but they're still better than the Boston Bruins. The Toronto Maple Leafs are better than the Boston Bruins in the regular season anyway, and so are the Florida Panthers. Those are the three teams that made the playoffs last year. Now you have Ottawa and Detroit, who both got better. Boston is not going to have a great season. They're a team that's so consistent. But with all these players coming back, they're my early hot take of the NHL season. The Boston Bruins are going to miss the playoffs. The Boston Bruins are going to have a year that seems great because you have so much. It's so monumental. It's so special. It's heartwarming. You have all the feels. All your players are back. Oh, I can't believe it. This is like a Toronto Maple Leaf, Montreal Canadian attitude where you celebrate guys coming back because you know you will never celebrate winning. You know you won't win, but you got to put your arms around something so your fan base feels special, so they have some reason to come to games. Again, I feel sad for the people of Boston. You're normally excited because you're winning. You're normally excited because it's that kid who's 10 years old that says, it's my 8th parade, I'm only 10 years old. Now we're happy because David Krejci came back from the Czech Republic. Who cares? Why not do better? Why not improve? I'll eat crow if I'm wrong, but I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be. Boston's got a new coach. They got a new mentality. I get all of that. Just because they have a new coach doesn't mean it's going to be a success. This team is old. This team is battered. They're going to start the season injured because of all their surgeries. And to look down the lineup and say, we're excited to go to the rink tonight and think we're going to win because of a guy named David Krejci is just lunacy to me. The guy looked spent 2 years ago. And he decided to go back to Europe because that was his decision. The organization wanted him back. Now you take him back because you need a cheap center? There's better options available. There just are. I would have taken a guy in a scrap heap over David Krejci, but you know David Krejci, and you know he's a good guy, and you can't disrespect anybody anymore. Although they did do it to Zdeno Chara, who is a better Bruin than David Krejci, so go figure. Cam Neely and this Don Sweeney and this core had backbone to say no to Zdeno Chara. That was such a big precedent. They said, goodbye, Z. We love you. You've done so much for this team, but we are going to move on. We'll let you spread your wings, go to Washington, then go to the Islanders. But yeah, David Krejci, who might be younger than Z when they did it to him, but is not the player he used to be, will not have the same production, will not be what they think he is, in my opinion. They let him come back on a one-year deal. They didn't give Zdeno Chara that same look, that same respect. Why? It's because they think they're in a different window now. Adding David Krejci, Patrice Bergeron, keeping Jake DeBrusk after he rescinded his trade request and then re-signing him. Hampus Lindholm, who was not a great ad so far. Where in those flurry of moves does it scream Stanley Cup? Where in those flurries of moves does it say, okay, we can beat Colorado? Where in those flurry of moves does that say we can beat Minnesota? No offense, Minnesota. I love you. But where in those flurries of moves? Boston fans, you might hate me for this, but give it about 7 months, and you'll see that I'm right. And for every Boston fan out there that is against my opinion, really think about it. Really think about your roster and what you're going to have to bring. Would you have rather made a play for Mark Scheifele or brought back David Krejci and his hobbled ass? I'd go with Scheifele. But that's just me. Good luck. Quickly, Flames signed Jonathan Huberdeau, as I mentioned earlier, to an 8-year, $10.5 million deal. I didn't get to touch on this last week with no Friday show. So quickly, I understand it for Huberdeau. As I mentioned before, 8 years, $10.5 million. Yeah, you're going to take that money, whether it's in Calgary, Kyle, St. Lucas, doesn't matter. He's going to take that money because he's not getting $10.5 million on the open market. Period. End of story. No team would have given it $10.5 million. He's a great player. I'm not giving a 30-year-old player $10.5 million. I'll tell you why. There's a team that plays in Ontario that gave a player who was 27 $11 million. He's spent. He's 32. You're not going to anymore. It's bad business. It's not the way you do it. Look at the Jonathan Toews contract. He was around that age when he got the deal. What's happened since? This is what happens. You give a player that's close to 30 this type of money, this type of term, 8 out of 10 times it doesn't go well. Patrick Kane is the anomaly, not the precedent. So that is where I see it here. For Calgary, it's a couple of reasons for this contract. Number one, you're desperate. You don't want to be Columbus, where everybody is leaving you and nobody wants to play in Columbus, and you have to sell golf courses and not your team and how you're playing. No offense, Ben Murray. But, so you have to do that. You have to bring a player in that has some high profile and show people, hey, we mean business. We're trying to win championships. Come play in Calgary. I don't think it's going to help. Nevertheless, I think teams think it does. So they bring Huberdeau back. I assume they'll bring Mackenzie Weegar on a long-term extension as well. So both guys will be signed long-term. But also for Calgary, desperation is oftentimes the worst time to make a signing. Jonathan Huberdeau is a great player right now. But as I mentioned, he'll be 30 when the contract kicks in. That's 38 when it's up at $10.5 million. He's got a limited no trade at the back end of it. What are you doing to win? That's my question. Because Elias Lindholm, I love. He's such a valuable player. He's the best player in the Flames. Who's your number 2 center? Dylan Dubé is not going to cut it. Go through that lineup. They don't have a number 2 center. They don't, still. Through these trades, through the moves they made, they do not have a number 2 center. Nazem Kadri, I don't believe is going to Calgary. Maybe he will. They'll make a last-minute pitch. He'll take the money to go play in Calgary, but I doubt it. I think he's either going to go to Long Island or he's waiting for Colorado to trade Sammy Girard and open up money. We'll wait and see what happens as we move forward here. I don't know where that goes, but that's my thought on this. To me, it's just a stupid decision. Just is. They're a team that's walking the gangplank and they got the rope around their neck. Brad Treliving kept his job because he had a good season last year. Daryl Sutter's not coaching forever. That's going to be a change. That's a new regime, likely one that's transitioning. You still don't have a number 1 defenseman. You have a great goaltender, but he didn't play well in the playoffs. So you have a good team, but you're not great. And in sports, when you're good and you don't really see a window to being great, I'll push back and see what I can do. You can try to move some pieces to become great, or you can retool and see what you can do. Huberdeau is a piece you can trade. I do think it's a hell of a lot harder now. 8 years at 10.5. Even if it doesn't go well in the next 2 years, you have to blow it up. 6 years left in the contract, $10.5 million. You're eating some of that. That's not an easy contract to move. Even if the cap goes up, it's not going to go up by $100 million here. We're coming off a pandemic. It's expensive. It's really expensive to spend money. It costs a lot to do things. Calgary's got to figure out a way to be relevant. They tried to do that with Huberdeau signing. It just reeks of desperation. And desperate teams are often the worst teams. Is Andrew Mangiapane going to have another great season? Is Rasmus Andersson finally going to blossom into that number 1 defenseman? Who's going to produce on the bottom lines for this team? Do they have a third-line center that can really show things? Is Jakob Pilche going to be an all-star in his first season in the NHL? Because they're projecting him to play in the NHL next year. Will he be a great player right away? Probably unfair to think that, but I'm sure they're hoping that. So I don't see bright days ahead for this team. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Breaking news on the podcast. Earlier today, Kevin Durant of the Brooklyn Nets met with the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, Joe Tsai, to discuss his future with the team. And Joe Tsai, as you recall, Kevin Durant and his agent asked for a trade out of Brooklyn in June now. It was right after the NBA Finals. And since then, Durant's been rumored to go to the Raptors, been rumored to go to Phoenix, to Miami, but nothing has worked. Brooklyn's had a high asking price for Durant, and it has never come together. The Phoenix Suns wanted him, but then Indiana sent a offer sheet to DeAndre Ayton. They had to match it. They took them out of it. Miami can't trade Bam Adebayo, so that makes the deal tough with Ben Simmons sitting there. The Raptors could pull the trigger, but they are unwilling to trade Scotty Barnes, and Kevin Durant is unlikely to go to the Golden State Warriors. So it's kept things in flux, and it's been almost 2 months, and he's still in Brooklyn. But this is the news of the day. Kevin Durant, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic, Kevin Durant told team owner Joe Tsai that he will continue to request a trade from the franchise unless head coach Steve Nash and general manager Sean Marks are fired. Durant's ultimatum is reportedly a result of his lack of faith in the team's direction, and he's firm in the stance. Wow. This is an interesting development. And the reason it's an interesting development is because Kevin Durant chose Steve Nash as his head coach. Kevin Durant, when coming to Brooklyn, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were consulted on who the head coach would be. They picked Steve Nash. Steve Nash coached Kevin Durant at the Olympics and a couple other things. They had good rapport. And so it was Kevin Durant's hire. Kevin Durant wanted Steve Nash. And now this player, who is great, one of the best players in the world, is asking that you fire the coach that he wanted to begin with. Interesting development for sure. I find it really petulant, if you ask me. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets, are you really going to call his bluff firing your general manager and your head coach and starting anew right now? I'm not doing it. To be fair to this story, but this is not giving credence to Kevin Durant, I didn't think the Steve Nash hire was smart from the beginning. Steve Nash had never coached anywhere. He was more known for being a part owner of the Vancouver Whitecaps than he was about coaching in basketball. He was a great NBA player, 2-time MVP, and a Hall of Famer. But he just wasn't a guy that I felt deserved to be a head coach right away. There are plenty of other candidates who were waiting in the wings, who were assistant coaches that just didn't get an interview because Brooklyn just hired Steve Nash. They fired a coach. They fired the now assistant coach in Golden State, Kenny Atkinson, so that they could bring Steve Nash in. Firing Steve Nash would have made sense in June because the team got swept and he hasn't had a whole lot of success as head coach. It would have made more sense not to hire him, but you can blame Kevin Durant for his hiring because he wanted him. He wanted him as his head coach. This player empowerment era is good. I do think players deserve to have some say in this. But when a player chooses a head coach and then a year and a half later says, no, I'm sick of him, I don't want to hear it. Make it work. You wanted him to begin with. We didn't really want him that much, but you did, and we wanted you to come here. We had to sell you on Brooklyn, so we brought you in. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm holding firm. I'm not firing Sean Marks or Steve Nash just to make some prima donna player feel better. Why don't you play better on the court? Why don't you let Jason Tatum bully you? Jason Tatum play better defense on you than any player I've seen in the history of basketball. Why don't you show up in the big games against the Boston Celtics and not get swept? He's been great at times, but he's injury prone. Him and Kyrie Irving don't have great cohesion. That's not all on Kevin Durant's feet, but some of it is. You're the best player in the world. Figure it out. Make us competitive. But Joe Tsai again, we talk about owners who are desperate. Joe Tsai is second fiddle in New York, and the first place team is the goddamn Knicks. The Knicks, who are pathetic. The Knicks, who have one of the worst owners in pro sports in James Dolan. The Knicks, who haven't been relevant when it comes to winning in over 20 years, and yet Brooklyn still remains number 2. They can do nothing to surpass the Knicks. And even with Kevin Durant, with Kyrie Irving, and all the BS that swirls around them, they still are second fiddle. They still do not command a whole lot of respect. For Joe Tsai, keeping a player that wants a coach removed who will likely demand a trade anyway after next season if something doesn't go right, you do not acquiesce. You do not acquiesce because he will play. I don't see Kevin Durant sitting out. I just don't see it. It's a long way to go here, but I don't think Kevin Durant will sit out a season. Now, if there's a trade that makes sense, trade him. To me, there's nothing yet. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I want Scottie Barnes from the Raptors. Plain and simple. I'm not trading. The Raptors would be lucky if Scottie Barnes is half the player Kevin Durant is when his career is over. Kevin Durant is in his prime right now. He's the best player in basketball. I don't think Scottie Barnes will ever be the best player in basketball, but the Nets see his potential and they want to bring him in if they had to trade Kevin Durant, which I understand. They look at the Celtics. They want Jaylen Brown plus Marcus Smart. I'm fine with that. I want both guys and picks. You're trading for a guy. But again, it's tough for these teams because they got very close to winning last year and they say, hey, another piece or two, we could have won it. If you're the Celtics, we don't need Kevin Durant. But for Joe Tsai, just reading this on the fly, don't overreact to this. Do not fire anybody just to appease a prima donna player. Fire Steve Nash because he didn't do his job well enough, or your team isn't good, or you don't have good cohesion, whatever your excuse might be. Not because Kevin Durant told you in a meeting, okay, we got to get rid of him. But I'll put it this way. This news got out. I don't believe that Kevin Durant's people would leak this, and I'll tell you why. Because this makes Kevin Durant sound very petulant. This makes Kevin Durant seem like a bad teammate, like a guy that's too focused on himself. And whenever something doesn't go his way, whenever something doesn't work, he will blame everybody but himself. To me, the Brooklyn Nets leaked this. I don't think his trade demand will be any higher today than it was yesterday. And teams will be even more interested because this doesn't look good on the player. This doesn't look like a guy that you want in the foxhole with you, a guy that's going to battle for the team. He'll battle for himself, and then if it doesn't go his way, he'll say, well, Steve Nash, Sean Marks, they were the problem. They didn't put a good enough team around me. Well, I just skirt away and blame them. That's not the type of teammate I'd want. For Joe Tsai, I get you're a desperate owner. You want to win. You brought in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving to win an NBA championship. But with all that being said, you can do it the right way and not look weak. Because to me, trading away Kevin Durant after being asked to do so is just a weak maneuver. It's giving in to the player and giving him all the cards. You cannot do that because you set a precedent for the future of your franchise that will not look good, and players who have less stature than Kevin Durant may be asking for stuff that he is now. So be careful with what you're doing right now. Let's pivot to tennis, where starting today for the next week, the National Bank Open, formerly the Rogers Cup, is ongoing in Toronto and Montreal, where the men and women of tennis are currently competing. And I love the National Bank Open, formerly the Rogers Cup. You get primetime tennis coverage. It gets you into the mood for the U.S. Open, which will begin in a couple weeks. It's coming off the City Open in Washington, where we saw Nick Kyrgios win the title last week. So he's coming to Canada. He'll be in this event coming off a win. But this event does have some big names. It's without Rafael Nadal, who pulled out last week because of an injury, and Novak Djokovic, who's not allowed into Canada because he's unvaccinated. But the Williams sisters are present. Serena Williams won her first match of the season today, defeating Nuria Perez Diaz in the first round. So this is big for Serena, not just to get a win, to get some confidence, but also to play some matches before the U.S. Open to get some activity under her belt. So good news for her. Venus Williams will play Jill Teichmann of Switzerland tonight in the night match for the women's draw here on day one. So having the Williams sisters present at your tournament is just, it's great. To me, I will say this. I get it's the Canadian tournament, and Leila Annie Fernandez is returning tonight, her first match since Wimbledon, where she fractured her foot. She'll play Storm Sanders, a qualifier from Australia. Serena Williams should have been on the night match tonight. I get that Venus is against Jill Teichmann. She's second on the main court after Leila. It should have been Serena. If I am Canada, if I'm this tournament, I want Serena Williams playing because it's Serena Williams. I'm sorry, but Leila Annie Fernandez is 20 years old. She will be back at this tournament for the next 10, 12 years. You'll have those opportunities. Same thing with Bianca Andreescu, who plays tomorrow. You'll have more opportunities with these women. I get it. Bianca won here before, but Serena Williams playing on center court, playing in the last match of the day, holds more weight. It's the smarter optic move. It's the smarter move for ratings, in my opinion. Serena wins her first match of the season today. Nobody knows. I do because I'm following the tournament, but she played at 2 in the afternoon. The match is over. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. You want people to tune in to watch Serena Williams. These night matches are special. I get you want to feature your Canadian talent. I just disagree with the way they've handled it. And I'll openly say, Serena Williams is an icon. Leylah Andy Fernandez has not won a major yet. Based on what we've seen so far in her career, she likely won't. What Serena's done, she deserves to play on the main court. She hasn't yet. I just don't love that look optically for me. I just don't. I don't think it's smart, and that's not the way I would have handled it. But again, it's not my tournament. I just do think it's a mistake not having Serena Williams play at least a primetime match. You have Venus tonight. You could have switched her and Serena because Serena is the greatest women's tennis players of all, is the greatest women's tennis player of all time. It's not a debate, and she's, you could argue, the best tennis player of all time. That includes men. So that's my one gripe with day one here at the National Bank Open. But on the men's side, Denis Shapovalov will play Alex de Minaur tonight, which is a really interesting match. It's two young players who have a lot of potential. Denis de Minaur got to a quarterfinal at Wimbledon. Denis has been on a tough streak lately where he's not winning a whole lot. He needs to find some success. He needs to really start winning some matches when it comes to ranking points and things of that nature. So he'll get going tonight, although on the men's draw, there's been a lot of rain today. So don't know if he's going to be on tour on time. Leylah, like I said, is back tonight. She's playing. Simona Halep already won today, so she's through to the second round. Serena is through. Karolina Pliskova is through. Sloane Stephens is up a set on Sofia Kenin, two former major champions from the United States. But with no Djokovic, no Nadal, Zverev is starting to come back from his injury against Nadal at the French Open. This is an opportunity for Denis, for Felix Auger-Aliassime to jump onto the scene and do what Bianca Andreescu did a number of years ago. Yes, Rublev and a number of great players are at this tournament, but you could go and win on your home soil. It could launch your career. Denis beat Nadal here a number of years ago, and it really pushed him up the rankings, and it made him a household name. Bianca won this event, beating Serena in the final. When you win on your home soil, it bumps you up even more. It gets you some momentum. This will get you prepared for the U.S. Open in a couple weeks at Flushing Meadows, sorry. So I love the National Bank Open, formerly the Rogers Cup. It's great tennis at night. Finish your day, you get to throw on some tennis matches, watch that. So that's always a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. And as I mentioned, the men's draw, it's been dealing with some rain today all day, so they haven't been able to get on court much. So it's been dominated by the women. As I said, Karolina Pliskova is through, Elena Ostapenko is through. Sloane Stephens is up a set and a break over Sofia Kenin, who's coming back from a long injury. So we'll see what she can do moving forward here. But interesting day one here at the National Bank Open. We'll cover that throughout the week here on To The Point, as I love this time of year for tennis is great because you get some night matches, you get some intrigue, and you really start to build to the last major of the season. Not to mention for golf, we just finished the last PGA Tour event of the year, if you will, with Jae-Young Kim winning his first PGA Tour event at 21 years old. Shot a 61 yesterday, which is incredible. And he's only 21 years old. With the win, he qualifies for the FedEx Cup for the FedEx Cup playoffs, which start this coming Thursday with the Volvo event coming up. They played. So the way the FedEx Cup playoff works is you have the top 125 players. They play this weekend. That is then cut to the top 70. Then is then cut to the top 30, and they play in 3 weeks' time at the Tour Championship for the FedEx Cup title. The winner of the FedEx Cup title will win $15 million, and they will be they're likely in the running for player of the year. So again, it's interesting because it's all based on ranking points, and then when you get to the top 30 players, it's based on where you finish in the standings. You're given strokes to start the tournament, so you're in the lead. You're rewarded for the way you played all season on the PGA Tour. And these next 3 weeks are fun. Then you get into the President's Cup in September. Then we might see some more players flock to the LIV Tour. But this event these next 2 weeks are good. These players get to celebrate the fact that you keep your tour card for a lot of these guys, that you get to qualify for events the next year. You get to make your own schedule. Not to mention, I'm interested to see where it goes the next couple of days, because currently 3 players, Hudson Swafford, there's Matt Jones, and Taylor Gooch, have all technically qualified to play in the FedEx Cup playoffs. They are guys who played earlier in the year. Taylor Gooch even won a PGA Tour event, yet midway through the season, they decided to head to play for the LIV Tour. And they're now suing, saying that they should be able to play in these FedEx Cup playoffs because they qualified for it before heading to the LIV Tour. I happen to agree with them. They qualified for this event. They did it by their own merit, through their own play. And to me, I get why the PGA Tour does not want to let them play, because it sets a dangerous precedent. But at the same time, they played in your tour this year. They earned their right to be there, and they should be given it. They played enough events. They did enough of this, and they earned a right in. So I think it's just easy for the PGA Tour if they let these 3 guys play. Then you set your own rules going into next season. But if on the PGA Tour, Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford, and Matt Jones should be playing this upcoming Thursday, because that's just the way it works. They qualified. I get it. You don't want to allow the LIV Tour to overlook you, to looks like they're getting the upper hand, because they've already done that enough over the last couple of weeks. But these players play golf on your tour. He won an event in Taylor Gooch. He's a very good young golfer. To me, it's more unfortunate that Taylor Gooch is not on the PGA Tour anymore, because he's gone to LIV Golf, where he will be forgotten about. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I don't think I am, because I think this is the overall interpretation. But LIV Tour is not real golf. It's not intriguing. I don't want to watch it. I could care less about it. So now it's unfortunate for a guy like Taylor Gooch, who could have had such a great future. I think could have won multiple events, potentially competed for majors, that he's on the LIV Tour and he will just be forgotten. Because you remember names on the PGA Tour, if they win, they start to find success. Tony Finau won twice in the last 3 weeks. It's remembered. I remember him playing great golf. I don't remember a single shot of the LIV Tour, of Henrik Stenson leaving the PGA Tour, going to LIV, foregoing his Ryder Cup captain. He won a lot of money, but I didn't watch him play for a second. Maybe he's cool with that. But when it comes to this lawsuit, when it comes to these players stating their case and making their claim, I happen to agree with them. They should be able to play. Maybe they won't even make it to the second leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs, but they deserve the right to go in there and play this upcoming weekend. They can go to the LIV starting next year. They can go out to the different LIV events, but they should be able to compete, try to make some money. And again, I don't think it's that difficult. I think the PGA Tour should just let go of this a bit, because it's starting to look a little petty on their behalf. But I also understand where they're coming from when they don't want to seem weak, and the LIV is getting another upper hand on them after the last number of months where players have defected and left the PGA Tour in the proverbial dust. Now, World Juniors. They're back tomorrow, as I mentioned. 3 games a day in Edmonton. We got a 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and an 11. So lots of hockey every day. I read this morning that tickets are about where they expected them to be. They don't expect sellouts every game, but they are pretty happy with the state of play, where it's so expensive to travel right now. It's so expensive for hotels, and just with the with price of gas, everything, it's expensive to go to a sporting event. So they're they're relatively happy with the way things have been operating so far. And this originally was scheduled for December. So you're going to see changes. You're going to see players who were in their 19 year, who are playing in the CHL, not come back this time around because of different circumstances. Maybe because they were drafted, maybe because it could be a multitude of different things. But there are definitely some differences this time around. And we'll start with the differences for these teams. Number one, Russia's not here. Russia is not competing in the World Junior Hockey Championships this time around because of the war with Russia's battle with the Ukraine. So Russia is no longer in this tournament. I'm sure that's not news to everybody. Latvia has been added to the field, but the Russians are not competing. Matvei Michkov, who is projected to be the second overall pick in the 2023 NHL draft, cannot compete. I'm disappointed about that, but Russia is not here. That's the one big development. Number two, the Sergei Slavkovsky, Simon Nemec, Shane Wright, all are not playing at this event. Those are three of the top four players picked in this last draft. They are not present. Slavkovsky, Montreal wanted to remain and train for the upcoming training camp. Simon Nemec, same thing with the New Jersey Devils. They didn't want to risk injury. And Shane Wright, I don't think he was ever going to go back. He was projected to be the first overall pick, ended up going fourth. Seattle decided not to send him back to the World Junior Hockey Championships. So it is a buzzkill. Owen Power is also not back. Caden Gooley is also not returning for the Canadians. They do have a good roster, as I mentioned earlier. I'll pull it up in a minute and talk about their roster. But they're losing, again, Shane Wright. They're losing Owen Power. They're losing Caden Gooley, some of their key ingredients. It's also disappointing, no Russian players. You're not going to see Sergei Slavkovsky, who was number one overall pick in the draft from the Slovaks. They lose Nemec as well on the back end. So the Slovakia, who was my sleeper team in December to go on a deep run, they are no longer that team because they've lost a whole lot of pieces. They've lost a whole lot of ingredients that made that team really intimidating, a team to be reckoned with. And I just don't see them doing that anymore because they're missing a lot of firepower. Now, there is some good news, and that is some players are coming back that are really, really good. And let's start with Logan Cooley, the third overall pick in the draft by the Arizona State Coyotes, is playing for the Americans. Connor Bedard, the projected number one overall pick in next year's draft in 2023, is playing. Mason McTavish, the biggest surprise to me, who has been everywhere in the last calendar year. Olympics, Mem Cup, World Juniors, Hamilton. He's played seemingly everywhere. He is the captain for Canada. I never thought he'd be back. I thought Anaheim would say, you played so much hockey, you've been everywhere, you're not coming back. He is back for Canada. He's really their biggest name up front and on their team. He's the captain, and I'm excited to watch him play again. He has times where I'm really impressed by him, watching him at the World Juniors and at the Mem Cup. And then there's games where he really fades into the oblivion. Team Finland has a solid team. They are a team that is in Canada's division. They look like a team that's going to be tough to play against. I think they lost one player from their team going back from the team in December. So they are basically still intact. Brad Lambert, who will be one of the key cogs in this team, is back for Finland, the 30th overall pick in this past year's draft for the Winnipeg Jets, will be the top centerman for Team Finland. They also have Topi Niemela, who's one of the top prospects for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He is back in the fold. So they have a really, really good team. They have a really solid team for sure. And good to see Lambert back. Another guy to watch for Team Austria. Again, it's Austria. They shouldn't do great things when it comes to play. But Marco Kasper was the 8th overall pick in the draft by the Detroit Red Wings. Detroit seems to always make great selections. I love most of their selections. And I expect to see Marco Kasper although with not a whole lot of talent around them, have a solid tournament for the Austrians. Now, the groups are now as followed. They are reset, and this is what they are. Group A has Team Slovakia, Team Canada, Team Finland, the Czech Republic, and Latvia. It's a solid group for Canada. It's not overly tough. As I mentioned, Slovakia would have been a whole lot tougher if they would have gotten those players back. Finland is a good team. Czech Republic is a better team by osmosis. David Juracek is back. Jan Mysak got permission as a 20-year-old to come play. He played for Hamilton this past season, the third-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. He's a center iceman. He will be back as their captain. They have Jan Mosel in net, who's Jan Bednar is coming back, who is the goaltender for the Acadie Bathurst Titans. This past season, he's a Detroit Red Wings prospect. So the Czech Republic has a very solid team. And then in the other group, we have USA, Sweden, the Swiss, Germany, and Austria. So tough group for Austria for sure, where you have Latvia and Austria flip. Germany is a team that I look at the Swiss as a team that should be the team that finishes third in this division for me anyway. They have Simon Knack as a forward to watch for Switzerland. They have some players. Noah Potnote is a great player. They're a team that won't be overly, I would say, flashy, but they do have players that will be good, that will be formidable. Team Germany obviously had a great one with Hiescher and a number of guys. They'll just be missing those guys this upcoming World Juniors. As I mentioned before, Luca Musenberger is a good player on this team. Ryan Del Monte, Maximilian Grotzel is a defenseman who will be interesting to watch. Florian Bugel, he's a goalkeeper who is a high draft pick. So all these teams have. Sweden is the team for me that really is intriguing because the U.S. has a very loaded roster. I mentioned Cooley. They have Luke Hughes, who's the brother of Jack, and of course Quinn. So Sweden has Jesper Wallstedt in net, who's one of the best prospects outside of North America. So you got to love that. They have Simon Edvinsson, who, if you're going to watch anybody in this tournament, watch number 7 for Sweden. He's another draft pick of the Detroit Red Wings 2 years ago. He is legit. If I could ever say legit, he is that. William Wallander, another good defenseman. They have a lot of good defensemen to watch in this tournament, to be honest. Their forwards up front are a little less than usual. They lost a few guys that were not present, but we'll see guys step up and come to the forefront for sure. Linus Sodin's a guy to really look at. Albert Sjoberg. So I'm looking forward to the tournament. I really am. It's something I enjoy all the time, excuse me, in December, but I think it'll be just as fun now. I get it's August. Maybe everybody won't be tuned into it because it's August, because it's still warm weather and all of that. But like I said, it's great content. It starts tomorrow. And I'm just looking forward to seeing most of these guys get an opportunity to play. Because let's go back to Team Canada. I got their list of players last week, and I didn't get a chance to go over it. So we're going to do it now. And they got back 14 of the 25 players that they originally went with, which to me is a win. To me, that's a win. It's about as good as you can expect. And we'll go through it here in a minute. So, like I said, there's no Owen Power. There's no Caden Gooley. Jake Neighbors is not returning. Justin Sordiff's not returning. However, Team Canada is getting back all 3 goaltenders in Dylan Guerin, Sebastian Cossa, and Brett Brochu. As we currently stand, it looks like Dylan Guerin will be getting the starting job with Brett Brochu becoming the second in command, but that could change. Connor Bedard is returning. Elliot Denoyer, the former captain of the Halifax Mooseheads. Kent Johnson, a high pick for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who's another surprise to me, who's just a fantastic hockey player. Mason McTavish, Logan Stankoven, Ridley Gregg, who they're missing out some. I think Ridley Gregg will be a player that does better this time around. I expect big things from him. He's a really, really crafty player. I think he's going to have a good tournament. New Brunswick's own Luca Cormier. With no power, with no goalie, I expect Cormier to get a much bigger look when it comes to power play time. I think he'll be on I think he'll be their top pair defenseman. I'm looking forward to see what he does with the limelight, how he reacts to it, and how he does playing under pressure. Carson Lambos, another defenseman, Ronan Seeley, Olin Zellweger, and Donovan Sabrango are all defensemen that are returning for this team. With the players missing, I expect Zellweger to get more of a look. He was a frustrating guy to watch in December. We'll see what he can do. I think Seeley and Cormier will get the biggest look. They're two offensive-minded defensemen with two guys that take up a lot of the minutes. I think both these guys will get closer looks. And obviously the coaching staff is returning for Canada with Dave Cameron behind the bench. So 14-25 is pretty good. They open up their tournament in just a number of days on Wednesday. And again, it's not what we, there's no Russia being there hurts this tournament. There's no doubt about it. But Canada opens with the Czech Republic. That's who they opened with originally in December, and they won that game 6-3, if I can recall, in a very close game. And the Czechs will be an interesting first opponent. Again, it's a game for them we haven't played in a hot minute. Tournament starts, as I mentioned, tomorrow. 3 games tomorrow are Czech Republic and Slovakia. We got Latvia, Finland, and the U.S., Germany. And so Canada opens up against Latvia. I was looking today. They play on back-to-back days. They play against Latvia on the 10th. Then they play Slovakia on the 11th. And then Canada plays the 13th. They play the Czech Republic. And then they play Finland in the last game of the round robin on the 15th. I will be at that game. And all thanks goes to my cousin Sawyer, who got involved with Hockey Canada. They eventually got back to him that they did have tickets. So I would not be going without him. I'm very thankful that he thinks of me. He knows how much I love this stuff. So I'm looking forward to going with him, having a fun trip, and just geeking out on some hockey. The quarterfinal day, which is 2 weeks from Wednesday, or a week from Wednesday, there's 4 games in one day, 4 quarterfinals in one day on one ice surface. The team that gets that 4th game, I feel bad for them with the ice conditions, but I'm looking forward to watching 4 games in one day. That's going to be a lot of hockey. I'm interested to see if Sawyer can stick around for all 4, how many games he actually makes it to that day. He likes hockey, not as much as me. Not many people do. But again, looking forward to the trip, and we'll be breaking down the tournament every day until I leave. And I plan on doing podcasts out there. I'll be bringing my computer so that the coverage will continue as we move forward here on To The Point. So yeah, that starts tomorrow afternoon. We got the National Bank Open, aka the Rogers Cup, happening right now. We have the first leg of the PGA FedEx Cup playoffs this week. Seamus Fillmore will join tomorrow, as he usually does. Casey Ward may join as well. We're going to make some predictions for the PGA Tour playoffs. We're going to talk about a number of things. We're even going to do Ask Noah Anything. If they have anything that they want to talk about in the world of sports right now, we're going to do that tomorrow. I might even question them about their Cleveland Brown fandom after all that's been going on with the Cleveland Browns lately and the behavior of some of their fans. Maybe they were at those press conferences, maybe they're at the practices, sneaking down to Cleveland to catch them to start cheering for Deshaun Watson. But the Clowns, as we wrap today's show, were in the news again. They made headlines not because of anything positive that they do on the field, because that's impossible for the Brownies to do that, but Kareem Hunt, very good running back, came out this weekend and said that he could not get a long-term extension done with the team, and he has requested a trade from the Cleveland Clowns. Now, Kareem Hunt is another player who has been suspended for domestic violence and other news. No surprise there that they have him on the roster. Again, he's a very good running back, but the Cleveland Browns came out and said, we're not doing that. They'll continue to work with Kareem Hunt on a long-term extension, but they're not going to trade away an asset he's too good of a player to get rid of at this time. And I understand that take from them. I wouldn't want to trade Kareem Hunt either. He's a very good player. He's extremely valuable. They got a 2-headed monster with Nick Chubb and with Kareem Hunt at running back, and you don't want to let those 2 go. So it's interesting development now with the Browns, because now everything's just hinging upon the Deshaun Watson ruling. And I learned some new information on the weekend that I wanted to share regarding Deshaun Watson that I got wrong last week. I heard Mike Florio interviewed, and I thought I'd bring this to the forefront. I said last week that Deshaun Watson would be playing week 1 because he could sue the NFL. I was incorrect in saying that. Florio pointed this out. He is a former lawyer. He said that because the NFLPA had agreed to the 6-game suspension, because the NFLPA was already fine with Deshaun Watson missing week 1, that will not be a possibility because it was already agreed upon. So regardless of how long Deshaun Watson is suspended, he will not be active. He will be suspended for week 1 through week 6 of this upcoming season. The only details will be if he's suspended any longer than that. Now, I've heard, David Sampson this morning on Nothing Personal say he suspects that Deshaun Watson will be suspended 8 games to 10 games. That was my thought as well, that it won't be indefinite because they'll want to get this done. They'll want to get this over with. But Deshaun Watson will not be playing week 1 regardless because of the fact that the NFLPA has already agreed to that 6-game suspension, and they're okay with that moving forward. So that is where we stand on the Deshaun Watson side of the 6-game suspension. It'll be 6 games regardless, and we'll move from there to see how long this goes. I hope the story ends. Deshaun Watson shouldn't be playing. I wish that justice would be served. Unfortunately, it's not. There are other interesting NFL stories. Matthew Stafford is dealing with elbow pain right now that could be severe, that could linger into the upcoming season. So that is troublesome for the Los Angeles Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. We've heard Carson Wentz is having accuracy issues at training camp already. So Carson Wentz with the Commanders already not going well, aka the Washington football team, which they should have left it. So he's already having trouble in camp. No surprise there. Every team will have a preseason game this week after the Hall of Fame game last week. So we'll be talking about that. Games start Thursday this week to go all the way to Sunday in week 1 of the NFL preseason. So with golf this week, with the World Juniors, there's lots happening in the world of sports. Kevin Durant comes out today with a take, with demands. So we're going to have a busy week here on the podcast. Should be a lot of fun, a lot of content to dive into as we get into the middle of August. So everybody, thanks for listening today. Hope you guys all have a great Monday. We'll be back tomorrow here on To The Point.